pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. Arcuri?
Here.
Mr. Volba?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Cord?
Yes.
Mr. Coyne? Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Present.
Mr. Kane? Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Motolo?
Here.
Ms. Sesney?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
In your package, you have the draft minutes from the April 16, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
A second? Thank you. Any corrections, additions, deletions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. First item on our agenda is a resolution accepting part one of the full environmental assessment form, which I will turn over to Dick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You actually have under agenda items 4 and 5 two closely related resolutions that are for initiating the Environmental Quality Review Act, secret State Environmental Quality Review Act process for a couple of large tanks up in the town of Marcy. These tanks are part of our kind of long-range plan to expand our water system capacity. Should we ever be fortunate enough to acquire a technology firm, a chip fab site, or some other large demand, we would want to be able to do these tanks, construct them in a very timely manner. There's two tanks, one in Kavanaugh Road number 2 on the site of our old reservoir, and Toby Road number 3 on the site of up on Toby Road near the town park, Marcy Park, where we built two 6 million gallon tanks. The Kavanaugh Road site has currently a 3 million. So both of these sites have already had extensive project construction work. Both have concrete tanks already constructed on them and have incorporated into the piping plans and the layout future tanks should we ever need them. At this point, we just want to send out the basic project information to the interested agencies like Department of Health, the DEC, and involved agencies. They have a regulatory approval role, or interested agencies like the town of Marcy that doesn't have an approval role because we're an authority, but they certainly are interested in the project, and as we've done in the past, have offered to go up and go before their planning board or any groups and explain the projects to them. These tanks are not in our budget. We'd certainly need to have future financing if we ever did undertake them. But what this allows us to do is move into design in a fairly, rapid manner if we ever did need to construct the tanks. So again, this does not commit the board to undertake any specific action. It just clears the first regulatory hurdle of getting these tanks ready for future construction.
Is there any cost involved with any of this pre-planning?
Just a minor amount of fees for our Wendy Marsh, our environmental counsel, and O'Brien and Gear, the engineers who I did the environmental assessment for them. Certainly it's less than several $1,000s at this point. Yep.
We have proposed resolutions in the packet. The first one dealing with tank number 3.
Make a motion to move.
Thanks, Dave. Is there a second? Thank you, Frank. Any further discussion regarding this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The second resolution is dealing with tank number 2.
Kavanaugh Road number 2.
Thanks, Rocco. Dave? Any comments, concerns, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Our next item is an award of professional services. Is this you also, Dave?
Yeah. I should mention that both the tank projects and this award for some professional services were discussed at a capital committee meeting last Thursday, and I did send some meeting notes out on that, so hopefully that provided a little bit of background. But in both cases, the committee voted or reached consensus and moved it to the full board. This next one is for professional services, engineering services, study services to Jacobs Corp. 5 years ago, 2013, we authorized CH2M Hill, another large national international engineering firm, to prepare what we've termed a water system capacity expansion plan. What that plan did was take a number of these concept level projects we've been looking at, like these 2 tanks that we just talked about, the raw water line expansion and the treatment plant expansion and some other related work. This plan would take our ability to draw, treat, and deliver water from its current 32 MGD to full 50 MGD. And basically what this plan does is take all these individual projects, the plant expansion, the raw water line, and put them in a single document, a program management document. So we know that if Edge is looking at acquiring a chip fab manufacturer for the site, they've got a schedule for build out. We can construct our works, again, assuming the financing is available, ahead of that build out and make sure that we can always assure them that our flow would be there. And that wouldn't only be for chip fab, it might be for any other large demand. But we're looking at treatment plant expansion, the raw water lines, these 2 tanks, some other transmission line work. So back in 2013 or so, it was about $110 million. It's probably closer to 120 or 24 now. This will give us a new estimate for that. And also Jacobs Corp, the firm that we propose here, recently purchased CH2M Hill and now picked up all of their services and capabilities. CH2M Hill was well known in the industry for supporting and did a lot of chip fab, high technology type design and support work. So they're the kind of firm, as is Jacobs, that the site selectors like to see involved in the planning when we do these presentations. This is the document that we use to put slides together to show prospective clients and occupiers of these sites that we can both deliver the water and deliver it in a timely fashion. So what we're looking at now is an update. It's about $17,000, $17,000, I think, $300. The original study was $42,000 back in 2013. We have several of the same staff and a few new staff, plus it'll be now on Jacobs, letterhead of Jacobs study, and incorporate their program management techniques and methods. It just gets it updated. 5 years is a little old when you're talking chip fab and high technology, so we thought it made sense to do that at this time, since we're talking raw water mains and large tanks pretty much at every board meeting. So just propose that we award it to Jacobs Corp.
Any questions for Vic or comments regarding this? Someone inclined to make a motion one way or another? Oh, thank you, Rocco. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any further comments or concerns regarding this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. And Dick indicated that the minutes of the Capital Projects Committee are in our packet. Any comments on the finance, Scott?
Sure.
Because Jim is not here.
Jim is,
No.
in case you don't know, Jim coaches baseball, varsity baseball down in Clinton. He's an assistant coach. Just found out last night that they have been chosen to go into postseason and playoffs. So he found out just last night that he needed to travel up to Phoenix with the team. So we wish him luck. But thankfully our Deputy Controller Scott is here and able to say.
So I'm here to pitch hit. So it's, I would say the theme is a continuation from the March financial report. Revenues are up about $300,000 from last year. We're in line with budget. Consumption is up 2.4 million cubic feet, which represents about 1.7%. And then cash flow is in a recovery mode. In January, we had some large large expenses due to workers' comp and property insurance. So quick, hopefully I didn't strike out.
Any questions for Scott? Good report.
Definitely a whole
Pat?
Yeah, I only have 20 or 30 items. I'll try to get through them in the next half an hour. Actually, 2 quick things I just wanted to highlight. One is I think I might have mentioned at the last meeting that we were filming a new segment of the Central New York Open House TV show that's put on by New York Sash. So we did that last week. I think it came out pretty well. We focused on what happens in the ground when there's a water main break and how do we deal with the interruption and interact with our customers. And I think we got some good footage. It should be airing, I believe, beginning next weekend. I think the show airs on Sunday nights and then again on Saturdays or Saturday morning and then Sunday evenings. So I believe this segment will air beginning next weekend. So if you happen to see it, I'd love to know what you think about it. Try to keep the customers informed as actually what happens. I think they'll find it interesting.
When there is a break,
What is the resident responsible for, from the home to the street? Or,
No, so obviously the water mains in the street we fix, and then if there's a service leak, the service line goes from the main perpendicular into the house. Our responsibility is from the water main to the shut-off valve behind the curb, known as a curb box. And then past the curb box into the house, under the lawn is the customer responsible. So typically, if there's water puddling, if a customer calls and says I have low water pressure, or my water's dirty, and they're the only one on that street, we'll listen. If it determines it's a service leak, then we can operate the curb box. If it stops the flow, if the noise disappears, then we know it's between the curb box and the main. Otherwise we can isolate it, we can tell which side it's on.
so who, would they have to hire an independent, or would they use the water authority to correct the problem and then just reimburse the water authority?
No, at that time, we tell them it's their responsibility, they need to have a plumber. We have a list of qualified plumbers, we don't recommend one specifically,
Okay.
but we let them know reputable ones in the area that are licensed to do that work. If it's in the city of Utica, they have to be licensed plumbers. Elsewhere, not so, but we try to help them out with information at least. And that's been an interesting topic for years, that we've never really come up with anything different. Although I've had some ideas, we'll still have to explore them. And then, of
Well,
course,
I mean,
there's
on the
just-
average, I mean, I'm sure it depends on the length of or the distance from the home to the curb. Well, on average, what do
Well,
you
you
see?
just gave me a great segue into my next topic,
All right.
which is, and I'll answer your question in that context. So the second thing I wanted to discuss was, you might recall that the city of Utica has been awarded $680-something thousand or so to replace lead service lines. So someone at the Department of Health must have thought that it was still a municipal system rather than a separate authority. So we're the only ones in the state where money is being given to someone different than the people that actually operate the water system. So obviously, we're working in tandem with the city. The city's going to receive the money. And what we've worked out is that the city is going to add that task onto contractors that are already hired by the city as they're doing their street reconstruction program and doing other work. And so in that particular case, sometimes it'll be done just on our side, it may be done on their side, or the whole thing. And with that money, and it has to be split between 2 years, we're estimating that we're going to get somewhere between 110 and 120 services done. The average cost, if they have to do the whole thing, can be $5,000 to $6,000 from the main all the way to the meter. If it's half that, it's just the curb box into the house, could be $3,500, maybe less, depends on how far back they're set off the street, whether or not it's a front porch they have to tunnel under. Some of those things can add to the cost. But if it's a house that's near the street and it's a fairly short distance, it could only be 15, 20 feet. Might be less than that, could be more than that. Average $3,500 for their side.
What's going to determine how far we go? To the curb box or all the way in the house?
It's going to determine where the lead is. So
If there's
Dick has
lead on
already
both
said,
sides.
if there's lead on both sides, then the whole thing's going to be replaced from the main all the way to the meter. This is covered by grant money coming from the state of New York.
So if it's lead on the resident side,
Right.
well, are they still responsible for paying it? Or
Not
no?
under this program because of the grant money. Now, what I will say, and in fact, Mr. Karam was already sending some folks to us that asked him about it because they heard about the program. The way it's going to be structured is that the city's going to restrict eligibility to only lead services that are on the streets where they're doing the road reconstruction program. So that we get more bang for the buck, what we're trying to avoid doing, and the city agrees with this approach, is that rather than making a sort of a shotgun approach all over the city and having reconstruction, all these individual holes where they all need to be filled in and repaved and everything independently, if it's done in the context of street reconstruction, then the reconstruction cost doesn't fall into coming out of the grant money. So it preserves the grant money since the street will be restored by the city anyway. They'll do a lot more services that way.
But wouldn't it be safe to say that if the portion that's covered by the water authority is lead, isn't it most likely it's going to be lead to the home?
Not necessarily.
As a whole.
No?
Some homeowners changed their own because they had a leak. They might have had a lead service that sprung a leak 20 years ago, and then they went and they had it replaced from the curb box in with copper, and then our side wasn't done for various reasons. Typically, we try to do our side if we know they did their side. If they did their side and we didn't know about it, we might not realize it. Other times where there was, we were having a main replaced, we did a whole bunch of services out to the curb, notified the homeowners that we've replaced our side. If they want to do their side, it's a good idea to go do it at that time. So it's a mix. There'll be half and half on either side, and some are going to be the entire length. But to save money and to get more lead services done, it's going to be done on the streets where the city is already going to be tearing, milling the road and repaving it. That way the restoration cost isn't coming out of the grant money.
Right.
So that'll probably add 20 to 30% more services being done. So we're proceeding. The city has put together a work program that includes specs that were developed by our own engineering department and provided to them. We'll do the tap on the main for the new service to come out. The rest will be done by contractors that are on board with the city, and then we'll do some inspection work as necessary. And the work plan should be approved by Albany fairly quickly. They'll just want to see the awarded contracts before the work started. So we should, I would imagine, start the program in the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would think. Unless you've heard differently, Frank, on your side. Okay. So that's an update. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
But $3,500 maybe on average.
All right.
And if there's no other questions, I'm done.
Thank you, Pat. Any old business? Any new business? I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss current litigation, please. A second, thank you. All those, any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.